for those of you, thank you for coming today.
For me, I think the purpose of this is an educational experience for me. I would like to learn from you areas of interest and concern and your ideas. But I will start out with a few things that I've been thinking about. So, although it's primarily a request for input from you, I'll tell you some thoughts that I have. Okay, and I'm really glad that's not me. I just turned mine off. I thought what I would just do is tell you why I'm interested in this, what I think is positive and attractive about this environment. Talk a little bit about some thoughts about how to proceed in the future, some ideas about what might be good ways to go, and ask for your input. So, first of all, the positives. There's a lot of reasons why I think UT is an attractive place, and this is an attractive department. First is that is a very general kind of thing. I think Texas is becoming a cultural hub for the United States. I think in the early part of the development of this country, the Northeast was the cultural center. And in the last century, it kind of moved to the West Coast in California, although the East Coast did not totally relinquish. And in the modern world, a lot of people, as you know, are coming here. There's a lot that's culturally really happening about Texas, so it looks to me like a place for fantastic future development. I am not from here. I know you're supposed to say, but I got here as fast as I could. And I did 17 years ago almost. It's 16 plus that I've been here. And although I hadn't had that formulated at the time when I moved to Baylor College of Medicine, that has become apparent to me since I've been there. It's not only becoming a cultural hub, but you have some resources here that the rest of the country doesn't have and wish they had that make it a very potentially attractive place to recruit people to. So that's number one. Texas is an awesome place. Secondly, undergraduate teaching institutions are becoming a much better business model for basic scientists like us. I think in the past, medical schools have been more attractive places to be because we could do what I do, which is teach 4 lectures a year now. Although before that, I taught introductory biochemistry to 300 people who didn't want to be there. I mean, I have done that at the previous medical school that I was at. But I don't think medical schools are quite as attractive as an environment for research scientists as they used to be because of where our funding comes from. So while I was enjoying the privilege of teaching 4 lectures to graduate students who wanted to be in my classroom, I was also, over these last 5 years, paying 90% of my salary. And what that means for not just me, but all kinds of scientists, is that you essentially need one more grant just to pay your salary once you get to be a certain age and level. So this is not a story about me, but that is just an example that makes me believe that the whole demographic of outstanding biomedical research is shifting to where undergraduate institutions are going to be much more attractive places, which means all of this means that the very best people can be attracted here. And UT, you already have a great undergraduate institution. We see your undergraduates coming to graduate school at Baylor College of Medicine, and I know we don't see all of them, we only see the ones who come and interview, but those ones are very good. So you've got some great faculty and huge positives that will give this department the ability to recruit really the top people from anywhere in the United States and other places in the world. So that's what's tremendously positive and makes somebody like me interested in talking to you about this. So then, what does one, right, so I really think this is true. I think this department should want to be and will become a critical resource to the medical school. We can be, you can be, the engine that's driving the ideas and ideas for development of translation in the medical school, and that would be a wonderful thing to do. There's a lot of opportunities for scientists for basic scientists, PhD scientists, to collaboration with clinical collaborators can allow one to do things that one could not do on one's own, some of which can be exciting and productive and help our research enterprises. I think this vision is important here, locally, but I think it's also important nationally and internationally, and in fact I have been over the last, well, I've been trying to do this in my career for a very long time, but I've been trying to sell it to people in the last couple of years. And some of the people who I tried to seem to like aspects of this idea and vision. I was, in fact, just at a meeting in China. I came back 2 days ago, where this was the idea of using this as an inroad into cancer, to make use of other organisms, not just vertebrates who have cancer, as a tool to learn basic facts that can be very important in translation, was received positively in a workshop on how that government could deliver in a collaboration of the United States and China in cancer research using physicists. So they're willing to integrate even maybe more than just different areas of biology. They're willing to integrate different scientific disciplines. I don't know what they're ultimately going to do. I just told them my thoughts. It seemed to be positively received. And among the people positively receiving it, who I think is maybe a little bit less opaque to read than some of the people in Chinese government, who I didn't really know how to read, was the previous director of the National Cancer Institute in the United States, Anna Barker, who seemed to like this vision. So I think it's not just my idea, well, it's not just my idea, I think it's an idea that other people can embrace. Okay, so what is the mission of a department like this? I would say that the key missions are recruiting, retention, and nurturing the careers of outstanding faculty, scientists, researcher, educators. Very, very important. Producing exceptionally educated undergraduates, and raising the profile of the PhD program to a level commensurate with all of those things. And I say that in this way because I know that we pick off your PhD students at Baylor. I know that because they come through. And they're looking at you and they're looking at us. And if we say yes, we don't lose them to you. So that should change, in my opinion. We're not the only people who are picking off people from your PhD program. And that should be a goal to make that the case, that you can compete favorably with other institutions. If others of you know anecdotes where that's not true, please tell me, but this is just what I've observed in my time being at Baylor College of Medicine. Okay, so deep translation, what do I mean? I'm going to give you first, actually, a small example from a collaborative project that I did with somebody in your department, Kyle Miller, and actually with 6 other labs. There were 8 labs total on this. One of the things that we did that I think is a little bit deep translational is we engineered synthetic proteins based on a bacteriophage that let you do some technological things that are useful in any kind of cell, bacterial and human. And this work really came out of understanding of prokaryotic, phage and E. coli molecular genetics, but ultimately where it will go is, where it has already gone, is making tools for detection of DNA damage in human cells, which is important in cancer evaluation and detection. And where it will go in the future, I think, is to developing drugs that could be anti-cancer therapeutics. And this completely could not have been done by a cancer biologist who didn't know anything about phage or bacteria. It's a way that microbiologists could have an impact outside of classical microbiology. So, very briefly, the idea of this project was that I realized, and a postdoc in the lab who worked with me, we both got on the idea that it might be a very beneficial thing to, instead of doing what we normally do in genetics and biochemistry, which is focusing on the catalysts of reactions, that is the enzymes, to focus on the substrates. The enzymes can be redundant, and when you try to do analysis by knocking them out, frequently other pathways intrude, and it can be difficult. Moreover, when we get into drug delivery, drug usage, the genes encoding enzymes evolve, but the DNA substrates don't. And I'm interested in reactions of genome instability. We built these proteins that bind a substrate and trap it and prevent it from doing any further chemistry. And then because they are fluorescent, they also allow you to quantify the substrate, which is double-strand breaks in DNA. Here they are making foci in E. coli cells in, this is Kyle's work, in the nucleus of mouse where a laser has been dragged across it, making breaks in the DNA. And in the nucleus of human cells, I'm not really going to tell you the story too much. The protein came from bacteriophage mu. It's a double-strand DNA N-binding protein that just binds and doesn't let go. That's important in the phage lifestyle. Chandan Shi, who used to be a postdoc in my lab, who's now at Theranos in Palo Alto, he fused it to GFP and showed that the fusion proteins, he made a few different ones, work in E. coli for quantification of double-strand breaks in E. coli as foci, where they're very efficient and quantitative and allow all kinds of cool things to be done that I won't tell you about. And then Kyle's lab showed that they have similar properties in human cells. So these reagents have some advantages to classical ways that people detect DNA damage in human cells. And I can tell you that since we published this last October, I have had more requests for these materials, particularly the human ones, than, you know, the level of, the volume of what we send out is now the greatest of anybody sending anything in Baylor College of Medicine, I've been told by the office that does MTAs. So this is an example where just, you know, knowing a little something about one organism helps you do something that's useful for another. And I think ultimately where we would like to go next is to anti-cancer drug development. So that's one example of deep translation. You have some examples. Here are some other different kinds of examples. Susan Lindquist's lab at MIT has discovered Alzheimer's genes by doing screens in yeast. What a beautiful thing. Alzheimer's genes that other folks could not get through traditional human genetic methods. Your own Edward Marcotte has discovered arthritis genes using yeast screens in some very lovely work. And now I'm in a collaboration with actually Edward and Kyle and a genome sequencer guy at Baylor called Chuck Zong, where we are discovering human cancer genes based on, believe it or not, a bacterial genetic screen. So these are, you know, very straight ahead, these are very directed examples of deep translation where somebody who's not, you know, somebody who's in E. coli is doing something, or a yeast is doing something that ultimately illuminates human. I don't think everybody needs to do that. I think we could do, in this department where people are learning basic molecular mechanisms of biological processes, you can do the parts of that. You can learn your molecular mechanisms and potentially be part of influencing others who may take the translational steps. Okay. So that is one thought that I have, but as I said, I'm interested in your thoughts. So what would somebody want to do to make things work in a good way? Well, I think it's going to be absolutely critical for this department to partner with the medical school so that you all will be first-class research scientists and that they don't go elsewhere to get their biological expertise. You want to be the experts that they rely on, I believe. And I think there's a lot for people in this department to become part of collaborations there and be part of their resource base for biology. One would like to be attracting development and philanthropy to support the research enterprise. That becomes more and more important as grant funding becomes more and more difficult. There needs to be adequate support for the educational mission, and so certainly that needs to be looked after. Cohesion of this new department that has faculty from different disciplines, that's a very important set of paths to make sure are happening well. And my own, maybe naive, but maybe not so naive thought about this is that this is not really hard to do when people get to know each other. And so a lot of this might be achieved by making the venues for people to get to know each other and understand each other and trust each other and have relationships and get excited about each other's research, which could be done in a lot of ways, including faculty research meetings. I've been in departments that are absolutely as large as yours and have done this, and it's fun. And you do meet people and new things happen. Having a retreat that people are interested to go into, a departmental seminar series, there probably should be some internal organization of this big department with different areas of interest represented. That might be a good thing. There needs to be plenty of attention to support and promotion and mentoring of faculty, for their development, young faculty into successful scientists, and for promotion of the development of all of the faculty, young and not young, on the national and international scenes, I think is an important job for whomever you would like to have as your chairman. And the building of these things, I know this sounds a little touchy-feely, but this is really about when people get to know each other and feel that they're part of a common enterprise, fantastic things happen. I have been places where this happens and it really works. They have relationships, they have a stake in each other's research. Sometimes collaborations come out of it, sometimes the ability to make big grants. And it's good because everybody gets benefits, the quality goes up, and it's good for everybody. There are reasons why all of this works, including that granting agencies support it and like it, but also the kind of research we can all do is bigger when we involve other people who can do things that we can't personally do. So anyway, those are a few thoughts that I have, but really what I want to stress most is that I know that all of you know more about this department than I do, and I'm here to learn from you. So I hope that's what will happen next. Please tell me what you think and ask me what you would like to.
Questions for Susan?
Please, Kathy.
Why do you think that we lose our recruits today? Is it because of the human disease aspect, the translational research that goes on in medical school that we didn't really have, but now we will? Do you think that's going to improve?
I think that will improve it. Certainly some of the ones we get say when they come through an interview that they wanted to do something on the biology-medicine interface and they know they can do it at Baylor. That's a big part of it. It might not be the only part of it. So the department that I would be leaving has 2 National Academy members, 1, well, you guys have 1, but let me get that right. Am I forgetting somebody? The school has, so this is a hard comparison to make because Baylor College of Medicine is like sort of like your College of Natural Sciences. It's kind of smallish, but there in its entirety, you know, a reasonable pile of pretty high-profile people. You have high-profile people too, but maybe we have a few more. You know, they talk about medicine and they seem to project. I don't know if they're buttering up their interviewers, but they seem to project that they think they're coming to like some kind of a higher level scientific place. That is totally an impression that could be corrected, I think. I mean, you have outstanding people here and you can have more outstanding people here. So on both of those fronts, I think those are solvable problems. And the medical one is going to solve itself, particularly if you guys are driving the biological enterprise in the medical school. So the question was, how does this department drive the biological side of medicine? I just spoke with your provost, and I haven't yet met the dean of your new medical school, but what he told me is that that's their plan, that they don't want to duplicate the expertise of biology in the medical school. You know, in the past, I think 10 years ago, that would not have been as easy to achieve as it is now. So that's a very unusual model. Most university medical school associations have people who are biologists in both places, but I learned from him, which kind of supported this idea that you could really do it, that there hasn't been a new one of these created since the 1960s. I was unaware of that. From the 1960s until relatively recently, it would have been possible for medical schools to have a serious attraction advantage over you guys, but I don't think that's true anymore. For recruitment, I think you will be able to have an attraction advantage. When those physician scientists lose their NIH grants, they're going to go into the clinic and see patients, and none of us is going to do that. So I think that for recruitment of PhD scientists, I think it's possible to be competitive with medical schools now. So the fact that this was stated to me as the goal of where the dean and the university wants to go, that to me sounds very encouraging. Please.
In terms of faculty recruitment, presumably we would want to grow to recruit our large faculty. At the same time, the universities under very tight budget constraints. How will the two mesh in what we think can actually be done?
Okay, so first of all, at this stage of the process, I don't know the details. If I were my current or my previous department chairman, his answer to your question would have been a bunch of spreadsheets about what the revenue was last year and how much we came up above the bottom line, and therefore this much is left over. That's the kind of answer you might like, and it's definitely the kind of answer I would like. And I just can't deliver that kind of answer. So that's going to be an issue of great importance to me, and I think to whomever you're going to recruit as a chair. Right, so I wish I knew the answer, but I have heard the right things said, right? So the dean is saying the right things on this topic, and so was the provost. I understand that you will very probably have a new board of regents in February, which is going to be good news for everything intellectual that happens at this university, including biological research. The provost said very positive things about where he thought the financial picture would be in the future once you have gotten out from the yoke of, I don't know who's going to see this video, but current constraints.
You put philanthropy and development on one of your slides there, and so I'd like to hear some of your ideas on how to boost that. And in particular, how do you boost it at the undergrad campus when most of philanthropy is going to want to go to the hot new medical school? How do you sort of see your role and how we can maximize that?
Okay. Yeah, the medical school is going to be a bit shinier. But if they want to support the research enterprise, and this department is it, that will be a selling point. And there are some very, very exciting things going on here right now that are just perfect to feature for philanthropy people. I've done a little tiny bit of this in the kind of dog and pony show realm at Baylor College of Medicine. And all kinds of, I think it's possible to sell to them good basic research if you can articulate the direction of why it's going to help disease problems that people understand. Even extremely wealthy people, actually this is why it's possible. Extremely wealthy people all have family members and people they love who suffer from devastating illnesses. I mean, everybody knows somebody who has had cancer or does have cancer, and there are other diseases as well, and that's how you get them. You explain to them the connections. You are articulate about why particular lines of research really are feeding directly into some problem that they care about. And if the medical school is supporting the endeavor and agreeing with the statement that this is their generation of translational ideas, then I think it could work. I met the person, on my first visit I met, I guess she's new, Kelly in your development office. She seemed to me very energetic and competent. That, you know, I just have an impression, but I got the right impression from talking to her. So I'm hoping that that can be done effectively. There is so much money in this state. There are so many rich people in Texas, and they all have families who sometimes get sick. It ought to be possible. That's one of the reasons why I think the biomedical aspect is well, but that's not just that. I mean, for support for our enterprises, molecular biologists in general, I think that's a productive way.
Could I follow up your
Jeff.
Arturo's question on hiring? So I guess more philosophical, sort of a department this large and this broad with a lot of areas represented. How would you envision kind of future hires going? Do you continue to build areas of strength? Do you try to patch between areas? Do you try to represent everything? Sort of how do you do that
Right.
with limited hires?
Okay, so the question was, what could be a strategy for hiring in a very diverse department? And there are many aspects to it, so maybe I'll just answer them rather than restate them all. I have a feeling it's going to be a learning curve. I have a feeling it's not going to be totally set from the get-go. But one of the things that I can imagine is that different areas will need representation in an internal structure in the department, so that the people who really know what's going on in various disciplines, well, actually, I hope your chair is going to really know what's going on in all of the research in your department, but so that there can be advice from potentially some kinds of leaders in various areas who can articulate what needs are. So that will be one important thing, is hearing from the faculty where are the problems that could be solved by recruitment. Another strategic, there may be other strategic ways to go. So actually, things to pay attention to, and I'm not sure who's at what order in a hierarchy. First and foremost, getting really exceptional people, but as I said, I think that's going to be doable. I think it can be a magnet for that. If there are needs for connecting areas, there might be strategic areas to target that might help strengthen, like for, let's say if there were two groups that could be much strengthened if there were some kind of a connector individual who could facilitate that, you know, maybe a certain amount of targeting. There might be opportunities to improve the impact of the department in the medical school by partnering with others to try and get connector people. There are sometimes strategic reasons to do that, and when you do that, you usually get things back, like the ability to hire more people another time based on somebody else's money, which is always good. You know, when I've been on targeted searches before, and I have myself personally chaired 4 search committees with all of them outstanding results. We did not hire any duds. All the people we hired succeeded. Sometimes we've gone in with a mission, like we want somebody in this area, but always the ad says, but everybody broadly in the field of blah, 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 whatever it is, should apply. And then we really looked at those other best athlete candidates who might not have been in the targeted area. And sometimes, you know, when somebody was exceptional enough that it was clear how they were going to strengthen the department's mission, you know, sometimes we went for somebody who was, you know, slightly away. So I think there are a lot of strategies. I think you would definitely want to support existing strengths. So that was what you said first, and that would be a very high priority. And then you'd want to support existing strengths, connect things where it could have a synergistic effect for existing strengths. You probably would not, unless there was some very good motivation, want to de novo develop a new outstanding strength that you had 0 of, but there might be some motivations for going in a direction depending on, you know, connection with the medical school. I don't know, is that answering your question? It's unfortunately a lot of answers, but so I have some ideas about this. Right, anyway, well, those are some thoughts about that. And when people participate in this together from different areas, I think that will be beneficial. From different previous disciplines, work on this together. That could be a positive thing. Marvin.
So, you know, as I sort of travel around, you sort of talk to chairs and center directors and people, and one of the big things they all talk about right now is faculty who have traditionally been really well funded, maybe not so much now, just because it's hard times and sort of, and I've heard all kinds of sort of really conventional and unconventional means of sort of helping out, and in some places don't help at all. So what do you think, I mean, do you have any ideas about how you might sort of help faculty get through this sort of funding time? And then what's the role of the department in this? Is it, I mean, does this fall at the feet of the department, do you think? Or?
I hope so. I hope that part of development and philanthropy might be sustaining outstanding people in periods of in-between times for them. I think universities are going to, if universities want to be research enterprises, they're going to have to do a certain amount of helping people in between times. I don't know the structure of all the resources yet, you know, so I can't really answer where all of this can come from, but I think it's a very important job for schools. One of the advantages that you have is that when your best researchers have fallen on hard times with their grants, hopefully just temporarily, at least they have a salary. I mean, they still have a job. I'd say that's a bonus. Right, I'm on the Faculty Tenure and Promotions Committee at Baylor College of Medicine, and sometimes, you know, while we're in there doing the grueling job of making sure that the school is going to be a high-quality institution with the best people in it, and all of this deliberation about tenure, somebody will say, so what do you think it means having tenure here at Baylor College of Medicine? And one of the answers that I heard years ago and thought was, you know, unfortunately more than amusing was, it means, Susan, that if they want to let go of you, they will agonize about it for all of lunch. Because that's our salaries, right? You can pay it, right? Yeah, anyway, so I hope there's going to be a role of universities and departments for supporting outstanding scientists. I mean, we all know how long it takes to train people who can do what we do. We have something like 24 years of school, and then we start doing this other thing. So what are you going to do? Just turn them over and get the next person with that much? And then not to say that your education stopped when you got an independent position. That's a big cultural thing that's going on now. Right, it's clearly NIH wants, and other funding agencies want universities to take more responsibility.
Do you think it's going to impact hiring? So resources that would be used to hire new faculty will then be turned back into the department to retain faculty, or do you think?
Yeah, that's an important question. Insofar as, well, you know, even that one I can't answer because I don't know what the university will do from pots of money that might not be that. But if it's really a closed system, then probably. But I don't, yeah, I am unfortunately very ignorant about the structure of the flow of money here. So, right, I can't answer this the way I would like to hear the answer or you would, I'm afraid. Hey.
Could you elaborate on how you would go about raising the profile of the PhD program?
I think it's done with outstanding recruitment and retention, and shrugging off the inferiority complex of places that were devoted largely to undergraduate teaching for their revenues. So the same arguments we can make to our colleagues and new assistant professors when we want to recruit them about why the world is different and places like this will be the centers of the best biomedical research. Those exact same arguments can be used on students to say, well, it used to be that way, and it's not that way anymore. I'm not sure how interested they are in all of that, but I am pretty sure that if all of you believe it, then the message will get through. So when students come and tell me they think Baylor is a better place, some of the arguments can be made almost immediately. Oh, well, we have a medical school. You can do biomedical research. And we have, you know, the following awesome faculty. You folks, like I talked about national and international profile. You had 3 people elected to the American Academy of Microbiology this year from this department. I thought that was a pretty nice showing, really. And those are 3 people who will probably help to ensure that more people from this department do, including new ones. So all of those kind of things with the promotion of the faculty nationally and internationally, I think, increase the ability to project the right image about what an awesome enterprise students are going to get when they come here. And there will be examples that you can give. Please.
What do you see as the role of basic research that's not immediately or obviously medically relevant in a department like this?
Right. Well, for me, it's sort of hard to imagine biology that's not related to medicine. That's why I like the idea of deep translation, and why I said I don't think everybody has to like take it all of the steps. So I kind of like the first Harold Varmus in the National Cancer Institute, like when he was first in there. He's not so much saying this anymore, but his first time around in charge of the National Cancer Institute, he was all about rattling off the statistics of important medical discoveries that came from basic research done by people who had no idea that their research would influence the way important medical progress was made. Those arguments haven't stopped being true. So, you know, to me, there's very few areas of biology that it would be hard to defend.
Last question about, you mentioned sort of multi-investigator grants, also, I think related to that training grants and things like this. So what do we not have here now that we need to be successful for this? Or is everything in place that we should just be sending these out to?
Yeah, I don't know, actually, and I would like to know. So I would like to see all of your and your colleagues' information in more detail than is on the website without having to spend the time to PubMed 70 people. And it will be easier for me to answer that question when I've really seen what you've got in the way of all of your grants and publications. So I don't actually know what you have in the way of training grants. What do you have in the way of training grants right now?
Within this first week.
None? Training grants are very hard to get in the modern world. But I have seen them obtained. And a certain amount of it might just be strategic grantsmanship, kind of how do you bring something together that is really unique and valuable that you can sell to people. Some of it might have to do with what you might be able to do with the medical school. For PO1s, it's hard for me to imagine that can't be happening right now. For training grants, it's not so, I would need to learn more. For PO1s, it is so hard for me to imagine that you folks could not be making successful PO1 applications right now. You have very, very good people on research topics that are related to each other, where I could imagine the titles of their grants. I bet they could too. I mean, I think that could happen. And, you know, someone helping in that regard, I mean, how many PO1s are there in this department? Are there any? Or Alan, for example, do you have any in cell and molecular?
We probably do, but we don't really track those.
I'm not aware of any PO1s.
There's no PO1.
You don't have, so UO1s also?
There's a couple of UO1s.
Yes.
You got one, didn't you? Bob.
Okay.
You had a UO1 with John.
Yeah, I had a UO1. And we had a UO1 that developed antivirals against influenza virus, and it was 5 labs. And the problem, you immediately saw the problem. Problem is the UO1s are incredibly inefficient because it's coordinating 5 labs, some of which are here and some of which are another institution, is very difficult. And if they had given the money to 2 labs or something where they were right next to each other, it would have been much more efficient. And I'm not convinced that UO1s that give these wide-ranging cooperation between labs at different institutions are really the way to go, because they're
The people who manage them become devoted to the administration of all of those other people. That becomes their whole life. The ones that I've seen. I've seen some in protein structure function kind of things. And you know, the head of the grant, he spends his whole life coordinating these other people, making sure that they're delivering their deliverables at the right time. PO1s may be a little bit easier. For a long time, NIGMS was not doing PO1s than they are now. And the kind of people who I see who have just won PO1s in the last year, folks here are like those people. You guys could have those.
Well, I'm still old-fashioned. I think a R1 grant to its large enough, given, say, 2 labs, would accomplish a lot more than these UO1s that are so spread out, and you have to organize them.
Right.
I
It's a
just think, I think we wasted a hell of a lot of money.
right, but so I mean that's kind of a philosophical issue about what the NIH should do. But for those of us on the ground who want to run labs, sort of the other point of view is they're doing whatever they're doing, and we can tell them their opinion, and sometimes they listen. But in the meantime, funds are available. Are we going to get them, or is somebody else going to get them? And you know, so maybe, I can also list several things that I think NIH could have done better than to spend their money on. But really, we're going to be in the business of getting what they've got that we could get, I hope.
I'm just curious about your thoughts on the structure of the departments. There are smaller departments that have divisional structures. What are your thoughts on divisions?
I think it might be useful to have where divisions of particular areas could exist and have leaders who could participate in an organizational way. I think it probably would make your next chair's job easier. And it's a large enough department that that seems like a good idea to me. And hopefully the people who take their time to help others by doing that job, hopefully they could be recognized in some way for doing that so that it's not just a thankless task. Please.
Susan, so we have 68 faculties in molecular biosciences, not molecular medicine department. And we have more than 10 faculties in plants. How do you see plant people fitting into your vision of medical research?
I don't think that the fact that it's a plant makes it out of this vision. Barbara McClintock, personal communication. There's been so much awesome plant work that has changed the way we think about biology and our understanding of processes that are relevant to everything. So I don't think there's a conflict there. There are plant labs funded by NIH. I work on E. coli. I've had 2 NCI grants now, and I'm still working on E. coli. Although not everybody, I should say, not everybody has to want to do what I want to do. I really do want to find cancer genes in E. coli, and people don't have to do that in plants if they don't want to. But I don't think that the goal of supporting the medical school and becoming their intellectual driver for biomedical research is incompatible with having people who work on plants. all of us, whatever we're working on, we have to make a go of our research enterprise. And there are different business models for so you all know this. Every scientist is like a small business person. We're all running our small business in our lab. And we all have to find the ways to make that small business work. And I'm presuming, and I don't know because I haven't seen the stats, that your plant people are doing that. So if they're doing that, that's good. That seems like it can work. But everybody has to make their business model work with somebody funding their research if they're going to be a research lab. And it's not all going to come from NIH, that's fine, but they just need to have the money to do it if they're going to do research. Please.
So on the graduate education is a large part of our mission, and we have a large group of outstanding non-tenure track faculty.
Yes.
Do you have any vision or idea on how they will be supported by this program?
Well, I hope that they will be supported and supported very well because I understand that they do an extremely important mission for your undergraduate teaching mission. So, you know, at this juncture of where I am in talking with you folks and the college, I don't know where everything flows from and how much is for this and that. I just don't know the answers to that. But I want to agree with you that it's very important to support those people and give them a reasonable lifestyle and career path so that you can retain outstanding people to teach.
It is also important to make them feel part of the department.
Absolutely, right. I agree with that. You know, in the large department where I am presently, we have folks who are kind of like that, although their job is not teaching. Maybe it's running a clinical diagnostic lab or doing something like that. And when we have our annual retreat, everybody comes. And, you know, when I give my talk about E. coli and DNA and stuff, I talk to those people too. And I try to make it so that they understand it. And then they talk to me. You know, we should have scientific relationships with all of the people who are part of our enterprise, and everyone should know that they're doing something valuable that makes that enterprise run. Because just like we have our own small businesses, we also have a larger business, and that business model has to work. And it works better, everybody's happier if it's done in that way, I think. Please.
So you may not know all the details of sort of what is possible, but I'm kind of curious about your vision. I know you said we should be the scientific drivers for the med school, but as they have new faculty who are coming in who are not just going to be at first, I know at first it's the the Department of Medicine, the Department of Surgery. You said that the provost has said they're not duplicating basic science, but there are going to be labs there. Does that mean that you foresee that people who are hired there in the wet labs would be part of our department, or how does that really work?
I don't know. I mean, these would be great conversations to be having between deans to see what could be possible. It would be very nice to have close ties. And, you know, I don't know whether joint appointments might be possible. It might be very nice if they could be, because it would be a way for people to kind of buy in to another department. And for example, for you who work on immunology, there may be all kinds of things over there that will be very important for your work in immunology. And the closer you can, the more closely knitted in you can get with that community, totally the better. I personally love the idea that there could be kind of cross appointments and departments having things to do with each other, and also that there could be formal structures for us to really get to know each other. It can be very hard to get clinicians to commit to meetings, but I have done this. I have actually done this. I mean, they say, oh, yeah, well, we can have some meeting, but it's going to be at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 5 in the afternoon. And I just say, okay, you know, for the PIs, 7, you know, we can do, not very often, but sometimes if you want the graduate students there, let's go for 5. But you can make these things happen. I myself would be in favor of some kind of interconnections, but really, I don't know what will be possible. The deans who in the different colleges will be a big part of determining this, and I haven't met your new dean in the medical school yet. So there's all kind of things I would love to talk with him about how he sees things going.
We should probably thank Susan. I think there's the next meeting.